Welcome to a realm where personal growth meets expansive spirituality and where we're not just scratching the surface. We're diving deep, widening our perspectives, and having a darn good time doing it. This is the Enlightened Podcast, and I am your host, Jen Hamilton. You'll enjoy an infusion of motivation, empowerment, and inspiration that will resonate in every aspect of your life. Expect captivating stories, heartfelt musings, and my own personal experiences. But that's not all. I'm bringing awe-inspiring individuals to the table, so get ready to meet some remarkable souls whose wisdom and stories will leave you spellbound. No topic is off limits here. Brace yourself for raw authenticity, unfiltered vulnerability, and yes, the occasional splash of explicit language. We're delving into the realms of the esoteric, mystical, and the woo-woo, unafraid to explore the extraordinary. So if you are ready to venture beyond the surface, to explore the depths of your soul, and to awaken the magic of life, if your heart says yes, then hit that play button and let the Enlightened Podcast guide you on this remarkable expedition. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Enlightened Podcast. I am your host, Jen, and my special guest today is Amanda Ortega. Amanda is a work-life balance and burnout prevention specialist who speaks to corporate groups and coaching executives. Her mission is to shift the script from chronic stress to contagious calm so we can sustain success and overcome burnout. Once a stressed out leader and type A overachiever herself, Amanda's fast-paced career ended abruptly in mental, emotional, and physical burnout. She has since created the Stress Less OS, an operating system for leaders and teams that allow ambitious high achievers to establish a calm default state and succeed sustainably. Her recent published book is called Inward and Upward, Discover Your Blueprint for True Success and Escape the Toxic Success Trap Forever. It takes readers through her personal burnout recovery and provides a practical blueprint for stressed out overachievers to rediscover their true selves and cultivate a healthy approach to work and life. If you at any time have experienced a work burnout or feeling as though you're just a little bit fried and your nervous system is struggling a little bit, this is the episode to listen to, because not only do we share our personal stories, there is a lot of tips and tricks and so many gold nuggets of wisdom to support you in this journey if you're feeling a bit burnt out. Now, we'll just let you know that there is quite a bit of explicit language in this episode, so if you have kids around, please be really mindful. Amanda was such an incredible guest to have on the show, and without further ado, let's dive in. Hello and welcome, Amanda, the certified professional coach. I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, you are a bit of a master in the field of burnout, and we're going to dive into that topic today because you've got an incredible story to share, as well as the book that you've written. Tell us all about your journey that got you to where you are in this very moment in time today.
Yeah, I had an almost 30-year career in strategy consulting, large scale technology program management, the whole deal. And in 2021, so I don't know if you're aware of this being in Australia, but in the United States in 2021, we had 47 million Americans quit their job. And they call it the Great Resignation. They might be calling that same thing worldwide, but I wasn't even aware of that. So I hit burnout and I guess I wasn't original in my burnout, but I didn't know that all these other people were going through the same thing. It was COVID and that happened, and it really was more surprising to me than to anyone else. I think that it just really hit me. It was sort of a physical, mental, emotional stopping point where I just literally couldn't go on. And it just, whatever tipped the tipping point, I just stopped and I resigned. And, I was transactionally, and I was doing very well on paper, I had a really successful career, but I just couldn't go on anymore in it. And so, I left my career and I actually was really passionate about what I did and I loved my job. I loved the teams I was managing. It wasn't until later that I actually did some research on stress and burnout and found out that the passionate people are the ones that burn out at higher rates. So it's not necessarily a formula for joy. It can be kind of destructive as well. So I quit my job. I actually drove to the beach by myself for a couple of weeks and just decompressed, stared at the ocean, just kind of got my mental health sort of back in shape. And then, I got into coaching because I just really wanted to. I researched stress and burnout for, the last 2.5 years. That's what I've really been focused on. And I just really love going back into corporate now and really helping people with some of the skills that I didn't have before I burned out. So that really brings me a lot of purpose now. So I like to help people prevent, burning out, because it can be very sudden. You can't, it's very often that you just don't even see it coming.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a journey that you've been on. And yes, like the Great Resignation. It's so interesting because here in Australia, what we saw after, I mean, it wasn't even the Great Resignation here, it was the great firing of all of our frontliners because of mandates.
Uh,
Let's not even go there. That's a different story. But it was the great fuck you to everybody that we had needed on the front line. And so people went out and they started businesses and they started doing different things. And now yes, there's a lot of industries here that have dropped the mandates, and so they fucking should have. But there's a lot of there's a lot of businesses that can't find workers because everyone's gone out and started businesses and actually followed their sole purpose, or they find meaning doing other work that they wanted to do. And I think it's kind of hilarious myself that that's what's happened. But also we have a massive shortage of workers here. There's a lot of places that are really
Same.
struggling to get
Yes.
workers. Yeah, which is
Mhm.
really interesting. So not only was it just resignation here, but there was a lot of people having to leave, forced to leave. Like I said, that's a
Yes.
completely different conversation altogether. Amanda, what line of work were you in the corporate world before all this happened for you?
So at the time I burned out, I was in a financial services company and I was managing two different teams. So I was managing a customer experience team, which is, it's a research team that gathers data about customer experience. It was really exciting and interesting. It was at the enterprise level. And then I had another team that was a reputation management team, which sounds so different, but I've always been somewhat of a sort of on the cutting edge and sort of a change agent. And I'm not saying that to flatter myself. It's just true. It's just how
Do it,
cloth
flat
I'm
yourself. Yeah.
the cloth I'm cut from. Um, glutton for the hard questions, the hard problems, and there a lot of times in jobs like they'll be like, "Here's this new thing. We don't understand it. Let's give it to Amanda. She'll figure it out." And actually, there is a lot of pressure with being a change agent. That's another thing I really didn't understand was change agents might be necessary, but they're not always welcome. And so, and we can go into the whole psychology of, careers and how we get sort of wired for performance and acceptance. Like, we care what other people think. We're sort of wired that way because performance reviews, feedback, promotions and all of that stuff sort of wire us that way. So not being well liked because you're a change agent is sort of, it's sort of stressful. Not that I wasn't well liked personally, but just when you change things, you shake things up and some people like to do things the way they've always done them. Or they just like to leave at 5 o'clock. They just don't want a lot of extra work, and change always requires that. So in short, I was a strategist and I worked in digital channel mostly. So anything new that came up, like, you know, back when social was new, I got social, like when mobile was new, I got mobile, data analytics. So anything that was sort of new or strategic or innovative, I usually was managing or starting up teams to focus on them or starting up large scale programs. So that
Yeah,
was
very
really
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little stressful, to be
Little
honest.
bit, little bit, yeah. So tell us,
Uh-huh.
what were some of the signs that you knew that were indicating that you were burning out? Like, was it a slow release for you? Was it sort of like a chronic process, or was it just like bang, acute, like drop to the floor, I'm done kind of thing? Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think awareness is such a tricky thing. So burnout mode is very acceptable in our culture in the United States. It might be as well there. And balance is, there's a lot of lip service to balance. And we talk about like self-care, like we go get massages or we take expensive vacations or we go have wine with friends or something. And we call that self-care. So we don't really dig in, and it really is, there is an underlying cultural message that hustle is the way to succeed. So did I buy into all that? Probably, because it's the cultural belief system. And I don't know, maybe I thought I was doing self care. I, dabbled in mindfulness and things like that, but I was probably pretty stressed out a lot of the time. So I would say that burnout is physical, and it really comes from prolonged stress. I mean, it's not a very it's not as mysterious as it might seem. It's really just a physical process where cortisol is pumping through your veins too long and you just shut down. So, did I see signs? I mean, I was a stressed out, twitchy, like mom that yelled at my kids, and like I was working 40 to 60 hours a week. I mean, there were a few years there in my career where I was a single mom and the breadwinner. I mean, or, I didn't have a lot of child support. I didn't have a lot of support. So I was traveling as an executive for clients and had a nanny at home. People thought the nanny was the mom. There was a
Yeah.
period there. I'm not proud of this, but I was like that workaholic, and I was just, and I thought I was providing to my kids, and I thought I was doing the right thing, but it was killing me. And so did I see signs? I mean, I definitely, yeah, I mean, when you're on the burnout train, of course you want to jump off of it, but you think it's essential. And so you're like, I'm either in it or I'm going to end up under a bridge with a shopping cart. Like there's no in between. And you just kind of keep going. And no, I don't know that I saw a sign of burnout. Do you know what? I didn't even know what burnout was. I actually didn't even know what it was. Like, I don't think I even really heard anybody talking about burnout at the time. And I write about this in my book, but there was a phone call and it was the trigger. So you know how you just kind of fill the bucket, and then there's the one thing that happens
One
and
drop.
everything
Yep.
just
It
completely
just
falls
explodes.
apart.
Yep.
And you're just like, why am I wiping snot and tears off of my face at 7 a.m. in the morning on a random Wednesday or whatever? But what happened was a coworker of mine called me really early because it was before all the meetings. And she, we'd been working on something really stressful. And she just literally, I don't even think she said hello, but she just started yelling. And it was just like this yelling, 10-minute long, like, I don't even think she took a breath. And I was just like literally pouring my first cup of coffee for the day. It was 7 a.m. I mean, I'm at home, I'm in my sweatpants. I'm like, oh my God. And I just muted myself. I didn't mute her. I let her, just keep going. And I muted myself and I just started ugly crying. It was just like, bleh, and I kind of, everybody's burnout works like this, but I was just like, bleh, I just felt completely, I unraveled.
Mm.
And sort of after about 10 minutes of this, I unmuted myself and I said, I can't do this anymore. That was all I could think of to say. And it was more like a light switch. It was just like, I'm done. I mean, there really weren't
Mm.
a lot of words for it. It wasn't a complicated emotion. It was really just physically done. Done,
Yep.
done, done. And then
Yep.
it just became, how do I leave well? It was never a question of should I leave or not. I was leaving, but because, like I said, I was so passionate and I cared so much, and these projects were super interesting. They're kind of like my baby. Work was kind of like my baby. I mean, I was really married to work. It was part of my identity. It was sort of cemented into my like who I was. So I left well. I did give a long, resigned, but I gave like 6 weeks notice. And then I
Yeah.
even consulted back to the company. Like I just really wanted to set them up for success. And that's kind of crazy because I burned out. I don't know why I did all that. But anyway, so I will share this because if there are some listeners out there who have experienced burnout or are afraid they might at some point, I'll tell you what really struck me about the whole experience, and I'll never forget this, is that when I quit and I suddenly didn't have things on my calendar, I felt empty. I felt worthless. I felt like I didn't matter. I almost felt like I didn't exist. Okay, so that's type A right there. It's like when when your identity is married to your busyness.
Mhm.
So anyway, I share this in case it helps. And yeah, to now, gosh, I'm totally over it. I love not having things on my calendar. I love my life now. But at the time, it really rocked my world. So not something I took lightly. And, I kind of resented the fact that there was this great resignation and, it was so trendy. And I was like, I'm not being trendy. I'm not being flippant. I'm not just quitting. I think I'll quit my job and just go follow my passions, which I encourage people to do. But that isn't how it worked for me. It was a true physical burnout. And I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does beautifully. Thank you. I have a very sort of similar story when I had just the almighty breakdown. Like I pushed and pushed and pushed to the point where it was like, I am fucking done. And it's so interesting because since then, like that's when I was starting to step into the personal development space as well. I'd been studying hypnotherapy and psychotherapy. It was actually when I was studying NLP, so neuro linguistic programming, like doing the master practitioner training for that. And then I had like mirrors held up for me, like I had to do the work on myself, and it pushed me to my edge, and like then came the almighty breakdown. But since then, it's so interesting because I still notice old patterns that can sometimes, surface and repeat. And it's interesting because in my childhood, I was never modeled, self-care, by either of my parents. It wasn't the done thing. We were, in the, low to medium socioeconomic space. Like my mom was the breadwinner. My dad was, the homemaker at the time. My mom was also studying with uni. Like it wasn't even an option. It wasn't a thing. Like no one knew what self-care was. It was like get in and get it done, because if we want a roof over our head and food on the table, someone's got to do it. So it was never modeled to us to be like, hey, it's okay to take some time out, and it's okay to rest, and it's okay to work on yourself. Like even, if we were sick at school, it was like, well, no, you stick it out. I remember when I first started getting my period, and I was, the way I was taught to push through, don't take painkillers because God gave you a period, and so help you God, you will push through it,
Wow.
So like this, I guess now we have an understanding it's a toxic mindset. At the time, it was just the done thing. We were just taught to
Yeah.
push. And I think now we're seeing, like, as we're, deciding to connect more with our femininity, to connect more with our cyclical nature, we're starting to understand why we need to and what effect it has on us. And until we actually start to notice it, we can't change it because we don't see it as an issue. And it's so fucking sad that we have to get to the point of pressing the button that says, I'm out of everything completely because I'm just so exhausted.
Mhm.
I can't function anymore. And this is where We're seeing so much of society. Like we have been, like, especially for the last 3 years, we've been living in, this fight or flight response. Everyone is
Mhm.
scrambling for safety. I mean, like we were talking about the Great Resignation or the great
Mhm.
loss of jobs. The housing crisis that we have experienced here in Australia, like interest rates going up and up and up, rental prices being increased, like it's pushing people out of their homes. A lot of homelessness has been happening here. There's a lot of stress in the world. And it's constant. And then there was like wars happening overseas, and like everyone's nervous systems are just fucking fried anyway. So it doesn't
Mhm.
surprise me that we're seeing mass burnout on a global scale. Like it's not just in America where you are, it's in Australia here. It's literally everywhere around the world. And this is why we need to be having these conversations, because if we can inspire just one person through this conversation to be like, hang on a second, I'm feeling a little bit like what these women are talking about. Maybe I need to take a look at things. So, Amanda, if someone is out there listening to this going, oh God, everything that they're saying I'm resonating with, what is the first step? Like if someone is thinking, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted, I'm done, I'm feeling fried, I'm not functioning, I didn't even know what self-care looks like anymore, I'm exhausted. But they're also on, like, that hamster wheel of life. Like I actually don't think I can get off because I've got to provide for my family. I have to keep a roof over my head. I have to, work two jobs to make ends meet. What are we telling them?
It's a tough question because, you know, I guess my answer would be, where my mind goes is I've had clients who were first responders, meaning the people who, when we're running out of the building, they're running into the building. And, I happened upon these clients and at the time felt completely unworthy to be their coach, right? And really thought, oh my gosh, I'm out of my territory here. Like, I don't even know, and so I actually, had a group of coaches that I was a member of, and I pinged the group and I said, does anybody work with first responders? I really want to do this right. I got an earful. It was so helpful, but they were telling me about how, the mindset is and everything. And I think what I realized with that was, for them, cortisol is essential to their job. So let's just start with that, right? So the rest of us, maybe we work in marketing, maybe we're lawyers, maybe, and I'm not suggesting that anybody deserves the badge of like stress more than someone else, because it doesn't really matter what your job is. But when you really do look at a first responder, you look at, I am not going to tell that person to start meditating in the middle of a shootout or a burning building, right? So, what I've learned to do with those clients, and this could be very, very helpful for who you're talking about, where it's like, I don't even know where to begin. What do I even do? The trick is to look at stress as useful. And the trick is to look at it as a gift and almost like a little short term fuel pack that maybe we carry around in a little backpack on our backs, and to understand that it is definitely going to fuel our success on a short term basis sometimes, but that it is designed in nature. And this is not me, this is nature. Okay. We are actually designed to default to a calm state. We're not designed to default to hustle and chronic stress. And that's where we got it all wrong, right? In the modern world. So I think if you look at your day and you look at your week and you look at your seasons and you try to identify areas where you have unnecessary stress, I think that's a great place to start. And that even might be complicated because you may go, well, how do I know the difference? Well, stress is designed for urgent situations or emergencies, right? So when we add unnecessary suffering is when we ruminate about that traumatic event or that urgent event or even exciting event, launching a new website. It's the added mental process afterwards where it's like, will anybody go to the website? Did I make any mistakes? Ruminating, second guessing, self-doubt, fear of repercussions. So there are mental processes that really are almost like a virus in our operating system that I would call unnecessary stress that will lead to burnout. So if that can help people, like when they can say, all right, necessary stress is, launching a new product, or, getting feedback from my boss, or these are areas where I'm going to expect my cortisol levels to go up, right? But then I'm going to work with a coach or a therapist or someone to quiet inner criticism, or stop some of the ruminating. So there are things that we are adding extra stress, and we're prolonging stress, which is the definition of burnout, is prolonged stress and frustration. Merriam-Webster, definition. So that might help. Just the mindset that stress is necessary and it is a short-term fuel, but it is not an all-day affair. And see where that takes people. Because, one of my first responder clients, like, we identified that she had desk duty where she wasn't in a high stress situation. But maybe her mental processes during that desk duty, she was kind of retaining a lot of that stress. She was just go, 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 chronic stress, coffee, whatever. Um, so I think that's where we can find pockets of calm. And eventually, because it does take a long time, it takes a lot of practice to change behaviors, but to start changing our beliefs. I know that sounds so hard, but if we fundamentally believe that chronic stress is the fuel of our success, it is very difficult to establish that default calm state. So if we could try to run little experiments and try calm as an approach in certain situations that don't require, they're not emergencies. See how it goes. See if the world falls apart if you're calm in that moment. See if you can pull back and detach and be an observer and just kind of surf through some of these things. It's just, I think it's just awareness and then trial, like trying different things and different, just running little experiments. And then the brain loves evidence. So I think trying things really is the best way to make change happen pretty quickly, because then we really believe it because we proved it to ourselves. So I hope that's helpful and not too complicated and coachy there. But yeah, so that's what I would suggest, that sort of a gradual mindset shift where we change our beliefs. I think a lot of us have trouble sitting still and believe we're earning peace or earning rest or earning happiness. And we're saying, I've got to power through and then I'll rest on the weekend, or I got to power through and then I'm going to have this really nice spa vacation and I'm going to spend a whole bunch of money on it. And so I think if we flipped that and said, my default is calm, and then I'm going to reserve stress as the short term fuel. So that it's just really a flipping a paradigm.
I love it. And do you know what? I love the fact that you mentioned, like, yes, PS, get all coachy, because that's what we do. But I love that you mentioned it is about, those belief systems, because everything does start from an inside job. And you even mentioned it, like, we are creatures of proof. We have to go out and find proof in order to sustain our belief. So if we have been in, a corporate job or any sort of stressful situation, and we have had success, and we have made money, and we have had validation and praise for being that person or getting to where we are because of it, there's that little thing, our little librarian, our little reticular activating system that says, hey, look at all this proof that I've got for you that this has actually worked for you. Do you really think you can stop? Because if calm is the opposite of stress, but stress is equal success, by virtue of that, calm would equal unsuccessful. And so we really have to start to rewire that programming deep
Yes.
inside there. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, Amanda. Let's talk about some of the signs, because When was it? Probably about 3.5 years ago. I was working for a coaching firm at the time. So I was seeing a lot of clients back to back. I was also running my own coaching business. I was, running programs and workshops. And what happened is I was drinking 2 to 3 coffees a day, which was a lot for me. I've kind of gone on and off coffee for years. But what happened is I was preparing to sit in my first ayahuasca ceremony. And leading into that, I had to get off coffee. And I got off, I was like, oh God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, the withdrawals are going to be insane. Anyway, so I got off coffee and I sat with the medicine and I never actually went back to it either. I have the
Wow, that's
occasional
great.
coffee every so often, but what I realized was I was exhausted after this, but what I realized is that the caffeine, all it was doing is masking adrenal fatigue because I was so freaking exhausted
Mhm.
that I was like, hang on a second, the coffee's giving me the boost that I need. My body should be naturally producing energy, or I should be resting in order to restore. So for me, one of the signs of burnout that I was leading into was my caffeine intake. I also
Mhm.
noticed, just even the dynamic with my partner as well. Like I wasn't in a space where I was working with my desires or, really sort of dancing in the space of pleasure. And that was in life as well. Like I really wasn't showing up and having fun and just being in my feminine because I was so masculine driven to succeed and
Mhm.
be the best possible coach and see as many clients as I could because I wore that as a badge of honor.
Mhm.
So, and then I would notice as well that I wasn't eating very well either because I was always on the go, or I would be having coffee as a meal, skipping breakfast, skipping lunch because a coffee was the quickest thing to get in. So I really
Mhm.
wasn't putting in the nourishing food, which meant that I wasn't supporting my body. I wasn't digesting properly. I wasn't getting, the nourishment and the nutrients that I needed. So all of these things have a knock-on effect. I've been through times in my life where I've taken up smoking cigarettes again because it's like I'm just so exhausted, I'm burnt out.
Mhm.
What's my default setting from, when I was in my late teens and my 20s? Oh, that's
Mhm.
right. We just pick up cigarettes. Or alcohol was another one. I
Mhm.
went through a phase, a few years ago where it was cocaine, and so
Yeah.
like, take your pick of the vice kind of thing. And until then I
Mhm.
realized I'm like, hang on a second, none of this is actually serving me. So let's talk about some of the signs. I've just shared a whole lot of mine that I noticed for me. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you've noticed, especially with clients or even yourself, that you're like looking back on that now, that was the sign that the burnout was coming?
Oh, I mean, my life was fueled by coffee, wine, and expensive vacations. And it was like I used to joke about it as changing the IV. It was
Yes.
like changing from coffee to alcohol. It's time to change from,
Yes.
okay, it's that
Like,
time of
was
day. Gotta
it?
stop. Okay, last coffee, switch to wine. And did I sleep well? No. And I've learned also, just a little tidbit is that after 2 cups of coffee, you actually raise cortisol levels with your caffeine. So I do like coffee. I'm like you. I've gone and back and forth with like I've tried all these things and then I keep coming back to coffee somehow. I don't know why. But that 2 coffee rule is definitely something that I can say I don't want to add cortisol. And then when the cortisol is high, so it depletes our ability to, or it wrecks our ability to absorb vitamins. And there's some research out now that says that cortisol or stress hormones are actually more detrimental to our health than smoking. So,
Wow.
and actually, I was on a podcast. I was guesting on a podcast the other day, and this woman was just throwing down facts. And I was like, did not know that. She cited like a whole study, and it was about Parkinson's, but it was about this treatment, and it was like 10 people in a trial, and the one guy that it didn't work for, it was the stress, that it didn't work for him because he could not react to the treatment because stress, it debilitates our, it just takes our physical health down. Maladaptive habits are incredibly common. And, I got to also just shout out to any listeners that have maladaptive habits and have developed them, out of this fear of scarcity and this, go, 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 and this belief that, if I don't hustle, I'll be living under a bridge next month. That whole it could be completely irrational. You could have a huge savings account. I mean, there are billionaires that are afraid to spend a penny. It's a mindset. Definitely a mindset. But maladaptive habits is just absolutely something that we should not be ashamed of. Just don't waste a second on it, because it is so predictable that we would go to these maladaptive habits because we're trying to pursue something that is completely unnatural and unsustainable for our bodies. There
Mm.
really isn't a way to keep going at that pace. And, somewhere deep in our minds, we all believe rest is weakness. It's it's like the water in our fishbowl. We're swimming around it. We're not aware of it. When something's a culturally held belief, it's either what we, you know, accept, expect from others, and even pass along generationally, or it's the thing we violently reject, but it's the thing. And
Mm.
so it's present for all of us. Do you know what I'm saying? So this cultural belief in hustle, continual, I was just doing a PowerPoint presentation for a presentation that I'm doing, and I gathered a bunch of quotes to just emphasize, like, here's all the hustle messaging that we're getting in our culture. And some of them are just like, oh my gosh, you and I would just die because we don't believe this stuff anymore. But there was one that said something like, you know, um, if to compensate for a lack of skill, all you can do is like hustle. And then it said something like, and give 110% all the time. It added all the time. And I'm like, there is no 110%. What are you talking about? What are you smoking?
Oh, thank you.
And
Yeah.
then, B, there, all the time, go away, like, with your crazy thoughts. But it's a cultural belief. It's a limiting belief. It's a destructive belief. And somewhere in our subconscious, we believe it somehow, or we're,
Mhm.
and to get out of it, we almost have to violently reject it. It's almost like something we have to like reject. So anyway,
Mhm.
I just hope that anyone that has developed, poor sleep habits, drinking habits, drug use, or any kind of substance misuse, totally understandable. This stuff is unsustainable. So I think, it's beating ourselves up just adds more stress. So that isn't the right way to go. So, going on a journey where I really feel like our uniqueness is, to me, and everybody maybe comes up with different conclusions, but to me, the silver bullet is we were born uniquely who we are, and the culture, this performance culture, kind of subtly tells us all throughout our whole lives that we're not good enough and that we should be something other than what we are. And so we're
Mm.
pursuing that. And in that process, and it's okay to have a professional career, and it's okay to get performance reviews and be happy that you got, a promotion. But I'll tell you what, it does not measure our self-worth. And so maybe that's another piece of advice is like, could you make two lists? Could you say, this is what I've accomplished and this is who I am? And some of us, me 3 years ago, for example, would be able to fill out this column. Like, what have I accomplished? Oh, yep, master's degree, da 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 da, VP, whatever, blah blah blah. If you said, and who are you? I'd be like, wait, I'm so confused. I thought I just told you.
Mm.
you know and I definitely don't want anybody to have to like rock in the corner because they have this identity crisis when they do the exercise. But I'll tell you what, it's worthwhile questioning that and thinking about that, because your worth and your performance are not the same.
Mm,
And I would just say to everyone, like, you were born on purpose and your worth is innate and it's not in question. And other people's acceptance or approval isn't an indicator of your worth.
mm,
Now, when we're in the world and we're pursuing XYZ, yeah, somebody else's opinion matters, because guess what? They created that system and they make the rules and they're going to come up with the performance criteria. So, yeah, those are your hoops. You're going to jump through those if that's your job, but it's not your worth. It's not your innate
mm,
worth. And not getting that promotion or not getting that job is not an indicator of your worth either. So, I think going back and looking at balance as the stability of valuing our uniqueness and loving ourselves for who we are. And that might sound so like la la, kumbaya, but how hard is it though? Let me
mm,
ask you, to look in the mirror and not look away and look at that person in the mirror as you would look at your best friend,
mm,
and want the good for that person that you would want for your best friend, and
mhm,
love that person despite their flaws like you love your best friend despite their flaws. And that process of self-love, I'll tell you what, it just saves a lot of money, it saves a lot of heartache, and it is
mhm.
just it's going back to that core and just really going back to, all right, I tried it everybody else's way, I'm going to go back to who I truly am and just try to show up authentically as that. So,
I love it. And that's the thing, like if something's not working for you, go down the kumbaya route and see what happens. Like go down the self-love. Like I fucking dare you. I did it and my whole life changed because of it. I wouldn't
me
be the
too.
person that I am now without a self-love retreat that I went on in Bali that I thought was going to be the wankiest fucking thing. And it was like, oh, treat yourself like your best friend. And I was like, "Ooh," and then I sat with it exactly the same thing in front of the mirror. Would I say this to my best friend? Oh, I get it now. I get the self-love thing now. Like when I had that mirror held up to me,
Yeah.
literally and metaphorically, I'm like, "Oh, I get
It's
it now."
hard.
It's
It's
so
not
hard.
easy.
It's so hard. One of the things that I do with some of my female clients as well is instead of their best friend, I would say, like if they're a mother, I would say, "Would you say that to your daughter?" And I'll look, that stings. I love that
Yikes.
one. I love that one. Look, what
Mhm.
I'm hearing from you as well, Amanda, is that we're just packing up and we're moving to Italy and just enjoying siesta in the middle of the day. I mean, like they're
Totally.
doing it right. I mean, look how happy the Italians
Yeah.
are. And I'm half Italian.
Are you really?
Siesta is in my blood. Look, if the green eyes, dark hair, and big hips don't give it away,
Yeah.
I don't know what will.
I can't see your hips. Well, I just took my family to Europe this summer and we spent most of the time in Italy, and we
Oh,
just had such a
beautiful.
blast. And, there was this one hotel in, have you ever been to Monterosso, like Cinque Terre
I have
area? Oh my
not,
God.
but you're like talking
Oh,
dirty to me right now.
girl, you gotta go. But I mean, I was just sitting on this balcony. I didn't even know we had a view with our room, and we had two balconies overlooking the sea and the boats. And I just said, okay, you guys can go back to Atlanta. Your mom's gonna live here forever. And the nice people at the front desk are just going to bring her wine on the patio and little snacks and cheese. And this is how this is going to go. So
Yeah.
I'll see you guys later. And yes, so I was ready to live there the rest of my life for
Oh, I
sure.
love that. I actually went to London and France earlier in the year. I was going to go
Oh,
to
good.
Italy and I ended up going on the trip with my mom, and I wanted to go to Italy, and she's from Italy. She'd been back to Italy for years ago. She's like, I don't want to go to Italy. And now I'm like, we should have gone to Italy. Anyway, I'm going to go to Italy at some stage.
You
There's
are
like,
bucket
there,
list. Yeah.
there is currently, I don't know, what are we? We're at the end of October. So we're recording obviously before this goes live, but there looks like there's going to be like a catastrophic like volcano eruption over there anytime, like
Oh no.
potentially. Potentially, I'm
Oh
like, "Oh, no, no,
no.
no, no, not the
You got to
motherland."
go before that,
I'm gonna
Yeah.
go. And look, if I get
Yeah.
stuck in Italy because you can't travel out of Italy because of like the ash in the sky, I mean, I I have to sit on the balcony and have the staff bring me wine. Like, there's no other
Yes.
way. Like,
You're
come on,
stuck.
hot Italian man, come and fan me with
Mhm.
like a banana leaf and like bring me all the red wine and the pasta
Mhm.
and the olives because that's what I'm here
Yes.
for. Amanda, let's talk about some tangible tools that our listeners can take away because I'm all
Okay.
about that. So, with my experience with burnout and then hearing what you have to say, don't get me wrong, I'm all about that kumbaya life. Like, let's
Mhm.
come back to our roots, especially as women, right? So, especially as women, come back to even just learning what it means to work with your menstrual cycle. If you don't have a menstrual cycle, work it in with the moon. Learn what it means to be receptive to the different phases, the 4 different phases of your cycle, and work them in with, the seasons. Work in with, your desires and your pleasure in life, that you want to experience certain things. Work in with, like, yes, you want to achieve certain things, but what is success to you? Like, really start asking yourself the
Mm.
questions. One of my favorite questions to ask, not only myself, but to ask my friends and to ask, my clients, if you're on your deathbed at 108 years old, reflecting back over your life, and if you're on the trajectory that you're on now and you don't change, how is that little old person on the deathbed going to feel? Are you going to get there and be like, oh, I fucked that up, didn't I? Or I just, I
Mhm.
worked so hard that I didn't stop to smell the roses, or I didn't take the holidays, or I didn't love myself or care for myself, and I wasn't there for my children. Like, what is it that you are
Oh,
potentially
so
going to
such a
regret?
crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a side note, but like you're just bringing this up for me, but right after I quit, I would say within 6 months, 6 to 8 months, I literally lost 2 really significant colleagues to stress related deaths.
Shit.
And it was a sign from the heavens. It was like, okay, and one of them was the boss that hired me in my job. Even though I'd been reorged 3 times since he had hired me, we were very close and we would text each other. We're both obsessed with real estate and we'd send each other like cabins in the woods and different crazy stuff. But he always had this thing like what you're talking about where he was like miserable, but he was like, I'm going to power through. I've got this plan. I got this spreadsheet. There's people that have the app on their phone for retirement and they've got it down to the minute, second, whatever. And it's like, I've got a plan and I'm going to retire early. And he died. And it was heart related, stress related. And the reason I share that is really what you're talking about, because I'm sure, I mean, he was the guy that brought salad for lunch and ran and hiked. And it wasn't that. It was misery in his soul from, just trying to power through. And, I think, yes, I mean, I hope on my deathbed I'm remembering Italy and I'm remembering my children and their,
Yeah.
silly jokes and my dog. I'm kind of obsessed with my dogs. I'll probably think of them. Um, I wish they were here right now so you could see them, but it's the moments of joy that make life glorious. And I'm still a work in progress on this. My parents were both lawyers, so workaholism is something that's going to be hard for me to completely get rid of. What I would say, tactical practical tips, counterintuitive things that I've learned. One is, when you're stressed and you're trying to power through, somebody was telling me the other day, I don't even let myself take a pee break. But like that powering through thing, stop the next time and go outside and take a walk, or do something counterintuitive, because a couple things are happening there. One is, when our survival mode is, or our survival instinct is sort of kicked in, we perceive limited time and resources, even if there are not limited time and resources. So
Mm.
just questioning that this could just be something mental that's chemically happening in my body, and that powering through may not even help me in any way. The other thing that's happening, well, there's 3 things I'm going to say. The other thing that's happening is, I've learned that when we're looking at a screen for a long time, research shows that it actually tells our brain that we're threatened. It's
Mm.
actually triggers our fight or flight in our
Oh, I didn't know
bodies.
that. I have no
I
idea.
know,
So
I'm like,
you
I'm
can
getting
see
off
it.
that phone. No more
Yeah.
scrolling. But because you think about it, your brain's kind of smart and kind of dumb at the same time. Like your eyes tell your brain things, right? There's signals.
Mm.
So using actually your peripheral vision actually signals to your brain that you're not under threat because you're just like looking around. So if you go outside and just look at the sky and the trees, you've just reduced your cortisol in your body. Like that's a practical tip. And third thing, I promised you three things. The third thing that I've learned is, and I call it walking is working, is that you're actually, when you get away and you take a break from the grind, your subconscious actually has an opportunity to process a lot of that information that we're bringing in at lightning speed, and our ambitions are at lightning speed. I mean, we want such great things for ourselves, but we need those creative ideas, and we need things to meld a little bit, and we need to settle
Mm.
into our messaging or our business plan, and those things are visionary. They're not survival oriented.
Mm. Oh, it's so
So,
true.
right, and so going on an hour walk twice a day, your business is going to be more successful
Yes.
because you're allowing that peripheral, that subconscious mind, or do the dishes, or whatever, but do something else, because then your subconscious mind gets to get out of the frontal lobe and just process a lot of stuff that you can't even verbalize because you don't really know. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't, if
Yeah.
you're thinking too hard, you can't really even think properly. So those are some things. Like I just really also believe, okay, I'm going to add a fourth thing. I believe that perfectionism and being hard on ourselves and inner criticism and those things can also be cured by looking at nature, because you were mentioning nature being cyclical. Rest is built into nature, right? It's
Mhm.
in the Bible, or whatever your faith is. You look for rest everywhere and you're going to find it. It's actually more of an underlying message than all this hustle crap that's of the
Mm.
world, right? You're going to find rest in the more eternal things like nature and, spirituality. But another thing that's built into the beauty and the just amazing beauty of nature is imperfection.
Mm.
It's actually built in. So when you're out walking your dogs or whatever, just look up at the trees and think about that and go, I'm looking at beauty right now, and imperfection's a part of the pattern.
Mm.
And then it's just like we got to release ourselves from all this crazy perfectionism.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. One of the things I love about, like you mentioned, getting out and going for a walk, whether it's in nature, whether it's hiking, whether it's at the beach, like it doesn't really matter. Like I find that's when
Mm-mm.
I'm also my most creative. you know the stress is low, which means the downloads can come in, the intuition is heightened, but not only that, like we're releasing endorphins, we are feeling fucking good doing it, and that's
Mhm,
the state
mhm,
that
mhm,
we're meant to be in. Like we've said, we're not designed to be in that sympathetic nervous system response all the time. It
mhm.
works for us. It is there for a reason. We don't want to turn it off. It's so supportive to our survival, and it's not the state that we're supposed to be living in either. And I
Not
love
at
what you just
all.
mentioned about nature, because one of the things I tell my clients all the time is that in autumn, or as you guys call it, the fall, I have not ever seen anyone outside my window running and trying to sticky tape the leaves back onto the tree, saying, no, 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 don't fall off, get back on there, stay on there. You have to keep blooming. We don't do it to trees. Why the fuck do we do it to ourselves?
You're right.
And so just, connecting with nature and just noticing how the flowers just bloom, or the trees just drop their leaves, or the tide
Mhm.
just goes in and out and no one's fighting it. Why are we fighting ourselves? So, whether it's working with, you or I, or any sort of a coach, or, someone that
Yes.
can support you in this,
Mhm.
because sometimes we can't do it on our own. I haven't got to where I am in my journey of life on my own, I've had so many, coaches and mentors and people around me in different areas of my life.
Me
And it's not
too.
a shameful thing. Like,
Mhm.
everyone should have a fucking therapist. Like, that's what we need. We need someone in our corner
Mhm.
supporting us and showing us the way. And you've got to get to a point, I think, so whether you're at, complete burnout, or whether you're like, okay, well, I'm heading that way, I need to put the brakes on. Have someone
Mhm.
in your corner that is not going to only show you the way, but hold you accountable and give you different tips and techniques. Like, we're trained in this as coaches. This is what we
Mhm.
do. We're here to hold mirrors up. We're here to help you do the deep dives and go into, the parts of you. Like, for me as a hypnotherapist, I work with the subconscious mind. So I'm going to extract all of
Mhm.
those belief systems there. And, so help you God, we are rewiring those neural pathways to get you experiencing something different in life. Right. And so, in the most loving way. And so, like, this is why we're here in this world, to support,
Mhm.
people going through this stuff, because we've been there, done that, got the fridge magnet and the tea towel, and we will continue to go through it, but we have awareness of it. We have each other, to support. Like, we're all we're not, superhuman,
Mhm.
right? We're here to support each other through it. But there is, support out there. There are, tools out there. And this is why I love having these conversations, especially with fellow coaches, because, we get to share this, on this beautiful platform, for podcasting and videos, and, really be able to get that message out there to people that, you don't have to go through what we've been through. You can, if you want to. I mean, if you want to go do the burnout thing, full permission to you. But if you're feeling as though, like, okay, no, I need to do something about this, or I don't want to end up like what they've spoken about. Like, I don't have the capacity to burn out. I'm a single
Mhm.
mom. I'm running a business. Whatever the story is, reach
Mhm.
out. Reach out to myself. Reach out to Amanda. Reach out to another coach
Mhm.
that you vibe with. Like, just get some support. Read some books. Which, by the way, Amanda has written a book. Let's circle into that. Tell us about the book you have written, and how can we get our hands on this book?
Yes, and first of all, I want to say that when you were talking about reclaiming your joy and all of that, I was like, "Ooh, I need to get some coaching sessions with her." she's got a little secret there. So my book is called Inward to Upward, and the subtitle is Discover Your Blueprint for True Success and
Mm.
Escape the Toxic Success Trap Forever.
Oh, I
And I
love it.
I define the toxic success trap. I define as a couple things. One is a belief that stress is necessary. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't just mean short term acute stress, I mean chronic stress, believing that it's the fuel behind our success and we have to just buck up and power through. So the belief system. The the um the other definition is that success is a trade-off. And this is what makes me the saddest. I think you were talking about when you get to 108 and you're on your deathbed. So the belief that success is a trade-off of present day misery for future happiness that we believe will come.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
the
this is good.
the grim reality is that we are little mice and we're hitting that lever and we're getting that pellet. And because we're training ourselves to be miserable and power through, guess what we're learning to do? Be miserable and power through.
And
So
guess
if we're
what we're
not hit,
teaching our future generations to do as well? What are we role modeling to our children? Like, yeah, yeah.
and girl, I have some apologies that I have made to my children.
I've done the same. I've done the same.
And now I like send them all this like stuff, and they're probably like, "Oh gosh, here comes mom with her little memes and her little inspirational stuff." Now I have a life coach as a mother. But I dedicated my book to them, and the dedication. So Kaylin, Garrett, and Ian are my three children, my sons, and I said, "Your life is a miracle. Love who you are and how you're made." And when you hear that little quiet voice calling you back to your true self, lean in and listen. I
Mm.
think if I could, my mother died when she was 48 years old and I was
Mm.
21. And, you know, gosh, when I turned 49, it was like I was like, oh my God, nothing happened. Like, I just think it's just it's hard to grow older than your mother ever did and stuff like that. Anyway, another podcast, another day. But there's always in the back of my mind just that awareness that I could leave my kids prematurely just because it happened to me. And I don't want them to not be able to access the light in the darkness when they feel alone.
Mm.
And I'd go the traditional faith route. I have a middle child who doesn't. I'm not particular about that. It's not the point. Everyone's journey, everyone's, you know, the God of their understanding. But I don't want my kids to suffer in the darkness and not be able to access the light that they can access from within them in whatever method or religion or practice they want to adopt to access that. Because when you were talking about sitting at the beach and looking at the ocean, and there's the moon and the tides, it calms our nervous system, but it also connects us to the infinite.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think it also can help us realize, like, hey, I'm a beautiful part of this beautiful world. I'm natural too, and I'm a natural part of it. So I love your whole thing about nature. It's really good, but I just want them to never be alone, or at least know how to go to the beach, go to the woods, go to whatever it is that nurtures them. If it's church, if it's not church, I mean, I'm not really particular about that. I just want them to feel their self-worth innate to themselves. I want them to value their uniqueness. I do want them to feel like they were created on purpose. And I just want them to trust that there's value in that. I heard the other day, I'm always looking at these memes and I'm like, ooh, that's good. You know, I think it's us women, we're always like, ooh, that's a good one.
I love it too.
But
I'm exactly the same.
and I'm like, oh, I'm going to screenshot that one and save it. But I saw one the other day that said, don't be the best, be the only.
Mm.
And I was like, that's where I am in my life. I'm not competing with anyone else. I'm actually really not looking for other people's approval anymore, which is just such a miracle because I was before, I can guarantee you. But I really just feel like I'm aligned with I've done the work like you, I've done the shadow work, I've dug in, I've figured out where my trauma oriented, like beliefs and my fears. And I've just decided to align with my soul values and just be truly me and show up that way. And every day feels like I've spent it in a worthwhile way when I do that, whether I'm getting paid or not. And I still feel successful, and I'm ambitious. I just wrote a book, I've got a business. Like, I haven't stopped being ambitious, but I'm ambitious in a healthy way. I want, anyway, I hope I'm not talking too long about this, but I think what I've also learned is that healthy success isn't just about our transactional success, it's also about how we feel. And I think we've all been taught that thoughts are more valid than feelings. And I actually think the opposite now.
Mhm.
I actually believe that my feelings are more reliable data points than my thoughts sometimes,
Mhm. Mhm.
because my thoughts can be coming from that fear center in my mind, that where that survival instinct comes from, right? Where it's like the fear and the survival and the keep pressing through, like that messaging is still in there somewhere. But I don't know, I just feel like if I can feel my way forward and say, do I feel happy right now? Do I feel full and whole? Do I feel aligned? Do I feel fully calm and
Mhm.
present? Or am I distracted by some crazy survival thoughts and energy?
Mhm.
And it can still happen. I can guarantee you it still happens. But I can feel it now and go, wait, that's not me anymore. Where's that
Mm.
coming from? So it takes a long time to get to where you trust your feelings, because this culture does not accept that or encourage that, right?
No.
So
And that is the feminine way though, isn't it? It's the
yeah.
that is our feminine to go with the flow and move from feeling, working in with our bodies, working in with our pleasure points and our
Mhm.
desires. And like, there's so much unraveling that gets to be done to come back to that place. And that's why I love being on this journey. And that's why, ultimately I became a coach, because I'm like, I get it now and I want to support other people on this journey as well, because
Mhm.
I've either been there, done that, or I know someone that has, but I've always got the tools to support someone through that. And that's why, people go through this journey. Like I love working with people and they go pop out the other side of a certain thing. They're like, oh my God, I want to help other people
Mhm.
in this space now. Like I want to write a book, or I want to be a coach, or I want to write a program. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
do it, because we need this. We're a collective that we just need each other's magic.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And like you were talking about coaching being like a mirror, and I always think about how, butterflies are so beautiful, but they can't see their own wings.
Yeah.
And I really think about coaches can help you see your wings.
Oh, I've got the goosebumps. Yes.
And
Yeah.
we can help each other, just a supportive community of, women
Yeah.
and just enlightened people that, want to be conscious, want to have some of these conversations, aren't trying to operate out of just like, lack of awareness and powering through. Like
Mm.
these conversations, they help us see.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. Amanda, how can we get our hands on your book?
So the book is on Amazon. It should be on Amazon everywhere.
Hmm.
Inward to Upward. And if you just Google that on Amazon, you should be able to find it. It's the only one of that title. And it's got a pink color scheme to it with big, bold, black letters. And then it has the golden handcuffs on it that are open. So it's like about freedom from the toxic success trap. So,
Amazing. With a slight bit
yeah.
of BDSM in there with the handcuffs.
Yes. There you go.
Amanda, I have one more question for you before we wrap that up. And to you, what is the meaning of life?
Oh, my goodness. The meaning of life is to embrace your uniqueness and
Mm.
be no one but you, because there were billions of people born before you, and will be billions after you. And this little space right here has a design there's no two alike. It's only yours. Your life is only yours. Your DNA makeup there's no repeats. And discovering that treasure of what you were born to be and going back and embracing that and being that, I think it's the journey. It's the secret.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for being on the In Life and podcast. We will link to your website, Instagram links, how to get your book and everything through the show notes. Amanda, thank you so much for being such an incredible guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciated it.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlighten podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.